He was the definition of fitness goals and female fantasy, a chiseled body, a charming smile, and a social media presence that made hearts race and sponsorships roll in. Tavian Deloach wasn't just a gym instructor, he was a brand. Women lined up for his classes, slid into his DMs, and devoured every flexed photo he posted. But behind the filtered perfection and viral workouts, Tavian harbored a secret life that was anything but inspirational. They called him the king of the gym, the man who could transform bodies and make you feel like the only one in the room. But the truth? Tavian had six. 6 mistresses, 6 tangled webs of lies, and one final affair that would rip everything apart. How does a man adored by so many end up murdered by the very person who loved him most? What secrets was he hiding that pushed someone to kill? This isn't just a story about lust. It's about manipulation, control, and the terrifying moment when love turns lethal. Before we dive into this shocking true story of obsession, betrayal, and death, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more twisted tales from the shadows of modern love. Tavian Flex Merrick's lived the kind of life that made other men jealous and women obsessed. With the body of a Greek god, the swagger of a street king, and the discipline of a Marine, he wasn't just a gym instructor, he was a brand, a movement, a fantasy made flesh. Every rep, every flex, every motivational speech was perfectly crafted for his audience of over 2.2 million followers who hung on to his every word as gospel. He built Flex Extreme Performance from the ground up in Fort Worth, Texas, a sleek gym full of steel, sweat, and his own personal cult of personality. Online, he was the voice of Black excellence, a proud former Marine who taught discipline, a spiritual man who quoted scripture between sets. He preached loyalty, clean living, and mental toughness. He posed with his pit bull, Titan, and posted about fatherhood, even though no child ever appeared on his page. His followers believed in him. Women adored him. Men wanted to be him. But none of them knew the truth. Behind closed doors, Tavian was a puppeteer, carefully orchestrating a deceitful double life. He wasn't just in relationships, he was performing 6 different love stories at once, each one fed by lies and manipulation. Each woman believed she was the only one, that she alone had captured the heart of the city's most desirable man. He played each role flawlessly. Kalani Drew was the first, sophisticated, married, and dangerous. The wife of a real estate mogul with deep pockets, she had been the primary funder for Flex Extreme's latest renovation. To her, Tavian was a passionate escape, someone who made her feel seen in a loveless marriage. In return, she wired thousands into his business, no questions asked. Then there was Sadiqa Moore, a nurse barely making ends meet. A single mother who worked nights and came to the gym after her shifts. She believed in Tavian with every fiber of her tired body. She thought he was going to marry her. He told her he wanted to be a father to her son. She even gave him a key to her apartment. Trennis Holloway, his co-host on popular live stream workouts, was the most visible of the 6. Together, they were the fit couple goals, though they never confirmed anything publicly. Off camera, she told her followers they were figuring things out, unaware that Tavian was using her body and brand to build his own. Amia Boone was just 21, a wide-eyed college student who met Tavian at a wellness seminar on campus. Young, naive, and utterly enthralled, she was drawn in by his maturity and intensity. He bought her books, paid for her Uber rides, and whispered dreams about building an empire together. She thought he was grooming her for greatness. She didn't realize he was just grooming her. Breonna Felder was different. A high school PE teacher with a troubled past, she was older than the others and fiercely private. Their relationship had started with flirtation in the gym, but quickly turned sexual. Tavian secretly took and kept explicit photos of her, stashing them in a hidden drive labeled Flex Vault. She never knew they were being stored, let alone what he was doing with them. But Yariel Danvers was the most dangerous one. Yariel was quiet, calculated, and always watching. A graduate student in psychology from Shreveport with a fascination for human behavior and trauma, she studied Tavian like a case file. He found her intense, even unsettling at times. Still, he kept her around. She asked questions none of the others did. She watched the way he moved, the way he shifted stories between women. She never pushed, never pried, just absorbed and obsessed. Each woman saw what he wanted her to see. To one, he was a man trying to heal from his past. To another, he was an alpha male looking for his queen. To a third, he was a partner, ready to build a life. But in reality, Tavian wasn't trying to build with anyone. He was building on them. Unbeknownst to the 6 women, Tavian had a secret revenue stream that none of his motivational speeches or Instagram reels ever hinted at. He had turned his romantic encounters into currency. Hidden cameras were installed in his private home gym and behind mirrored panels in his bedroom. Every intimate moment was recorded, without consent, and sold to an exclusive dark web adult ring for large sums. The masked uploads featured only partial shots, altered voices, and heavy editing, making it nearly impossible to identify the victims. He was making thousands. Monthly. Tavian justified it as hustling smart. He told himself they'd never know, that it wasn't hurting anyone. But deep down, a small part of him feared what would happen if the truth ever surfaced. Especially with Yariel. She was starting to ask too many questions. What Tavian didn't realize was that his empire, built on lust, lies, and ego, was beginning to crack. And one of the women he had so masterfully manipulated was closer to discovering his darkest secret than he could ever imagine. And when she did, there would be blood. Yariel Danvers was the kind of woman most people overlooked. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She didn't fight for attention because she'd spent most of her life convinced she didn't deserve it. Raised in a deeply religious household in Shreveport, Louisiana, Yariel was taught early that obedience was holiness and silence was strength. But what her parents saw as discipline was really damage, a deep, aching loneliness that twisted inside her as she got older. Her teenage years were marked by unspoken trauma, emotional neglect, and a battle with mental illness that was quietly swept under the rug. Her darkest moment came during her sophomore year in college, when a dormitory confrontation escalated into a violent outburst. She didn't remember most of it, just screams, blood, and waking up in a white room with leather straps digging into her skin. The official report said psychiatric episode. Her mother said demonic attack. Either way, Yariel was never the same after that. By the time she met Tavian Flex Merricks, she was back in school for her graduate degree in psychology, ironic, given how broken she still felt inside. She met him at a wellness expo where he was a featured speaker, giving a high-energy talk on mental strength, God, and fitness as a form of spiritual warfare. He was magnetic, powerful. He spoke like a prophet. She was pulled in instantly. Tavian noticed her standing alone near the smoothie booth, head down, scribbling notes into a worn notebook. He offered her a free guest pass to his gym. That's how it started. Their first session was professional, just stretching and breathing. By the third, he was touching her differently. By the fifth, they were sleeping together. He called it soul alignment. She called it love. For the first time in her life, Yariel felt chosen. She wasn't invisible anymore. Tavian looked at her like she mattered. He kissed her scars. He asked about her dreams. He bought her a necklace with a small silver cross and whispered, "You're my peace, yeah." After sex, he'd send her Bible verses, usually about covenant, loyalty, or submission. She thought it meant he was preparing to propose. She fell hard, fell fast, and fell deep into the illusion that she was finally enough for someone. But Tavian was never who he pretended to be. Their moments of intimacy weren't sacred, they were staged. He had placed a small, high-definition camera behind the faux plant on his nightstand. She never noticed it. How could she? She was too busy building her future in her head. The first crack in her fantasy came on a rainy Thursday night. Yariel was studying when an anonymous message slid into her encrypted email account. No subject line, no name. Just a link and a single sentence. "You should see this." Curious, she clicked. What loaded wasn't just porn, it was her. Her body, her voice, her face blurred but unmistakable. She was on a site she didn't understand, surrounded by file codes, Bitcoin tips, and comments written in sick, ravenous language. She stared at the screen, unable to breathe. She had been exposed. Used. Sold. Her hands shook as she dialed Tavian's number. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. Then again. Texted. Nothing. Ghosted. That's when something inside Yariel fractured. Not like before. Not like the dormitory incident. This time, it was quiet. Focused. Cold. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat in the dark, watching the video again. And again. And again. Not because she wanted to, but because she needed to understand. The angles. The placement. The timeline. Her mind, trained in psychological patterns, started connecting dots, and what she saw was a carefully constructed trap. She hadn't been loved. She had been hunted. And the man who did it was still out there, flexing for the world, collecting likes, while she drowned in shame and fury. Tavian had underestimated Yariel. He saw her as quiet, fragile, easy to manage. But he forgot one thing. The quiet ones always have the loudest breaking point. And Yariel Danvers was about to make sure he heard her loud and clear. The air in Tavian Merrick's penthouse was thick with the scent of eucalyptus oil and sex. Soft jazz played from the surround system, a curated playlist he used to set the mood with every woman who crossed the threshold. But this night wasn't like the others. This night, Yariel Danvers had come not as his lover, but as his reckoning. February 2nd, 2025, the night the dream ended. She arrived just past midnight, wearing nothing but a lace bodysuit beneath a black trench coat. Her eyes were vacant, her lips still. She carried no overnight bag, no change of clothes, only a plan that had fermented for weeks in the dark corners of her mind. Tavian greeted her with the usual smugness, shirtless, smiling, flexing like she'd come to worship him one last time. He didn't see the danger, only an opportunity for more control. "I've been thinking," she said, voice honeyed and low. "I want to try something new tonight. Something freaky." His grin widened, ego swelling. "Knew you had it in you." He let her lead. That was his first mistake. Yariel moved with eerie calm, telling him to lie down in the center of the hardwood floor. She pulled resistance bands from his own equipment rack, looping them around his wrists and ankles, anchoring him to the thick yoga mat. She added a yoga strap across his chest and blindfolded him with one of his Flex Extreme branded towels. He laughed, assuming he was still in control. Then, she pressed play on her phone. The sound filled the room, soft moaning, her voice, his voice, recorded without her consent. Her image on camera, distorted and blurred but undeniably her. Her nakedness made public, her trauma turned into currency for strangers in the filthiest corners of the internet. Tavian didn't even flinch. He chuckled through the audio. "Damn, you sound good. You're famous now. You should be thanking me." Her hand twitched. "Was I ever real to you?" she asked softly. Tavian smirked beneath the towel. "You were a good fuck. That's real enough." The shift in her face was almost imperceptible. Something ancient and feral stirred in her eyes. She walked calmly to the edge of the room, picked up a 25-pound kettlebell, chrome, polished, his initials etched in the handle, and returned to him with no hesitation. The first blow landed against his jaw with a crack that echoed through the high-rise. Blood sprayed across the mat. He screamed. She swung again. This time, the temple. Then once more, splitting open his forehead. The blindfold slipped. His eyes fluttered in shock. Then silence. He gurgled, bleeding, twitching in agony. But Yariel wasn't finished. She knelt beside him, took one of the resistance hooks, its edge bent from strain, and dragged it across his throat with slow, deliberate force. The gash opened wide. A river of red pulsed out onto the mat. As his breath rattled and failed, she leaned down, lips brushing his sweaty forehead. "I was never yours to break." Then she stood, wiped her hands on the edge of a towel, and walked to the master bathroom. There, hanging on the door, was a plush white robe. Embroidered on the collar in gold stitching, K.D. Kalani drew. Yariel smiled to herself, slid it on, and left the penthouse without looking back. The streets of Fort Worth were quiet, sleeping. But inside the tower of glass and steel behind her, the image of perfection bled out alone on the floor, undone by the one woman he never should have underestimated. It was the stench that gave him away first. By mid-morning, the cleaning staff at Tavian Merrick's upscale Fort Worth penthouse hesitated outside the door, noses wrinkled, nerves tight. The building was quiet, eerily so. When the keycard granted them entry, what they found inside would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Tavian's body lay twisted on the yoga mat, blood congealed in pools around his head and chest. His face was barely recognizable, shattered and bruised, eyes glassy with death. Authorities would later find a burner phone hidden inside the gym bag's side pocket, still open to an anonymous Instagram account created under the name at Flex Secrets. The account had been activated just minutes before his estimated time of death, with no followers, no posts, just a bio that read, "Nothing stays hidden forever." As the police secured the scene, a digital storm brewed outside the apartment walls. By noon, Tavian's death hit the local news. By sundown, the country was gripped by what was quickly dubbed the Flex Murder. Hashtags exploded across every platform. Hashtag Flex Murder, hashtag Tavian Merrick's, hashtag Gym Reaper. Everyone had something to say, but no one was ready for the truth that came next. It started with Kalani Drew. She fainted when police knocked on her Highland Park estate. Her husband had been away on business in Miami. She hadn't known about the recordings, but she had known about Yariel. She just never thought it would end in blood. Sadiqa Moore, devastated and heartbroken, went public the next day, clutching screenshots of Tavian's promises to marry her and help raise her son. Trennis Holloway posted a teary-eyed confession video, revealing how Tavian had pressured her into private workouts, then threatened to leak footage if she ever left him. Amia Boone, barely 21, posted a TikTok with trembling hands, showing the necklace he gave her, identical to the one Yariel wore in court. Breonna Felder refused to speak, but an anonymous leak revealed dozens of explicit photos, her face clearly visible, her name tagged in private folders on his cloud drive. The revelations came fast, unrelenting. Tavian hadn't just been a womanizer. He'd been a predator with a system. Each woman was groomed, isolated, adored, recorded. Some were filmed unknowingly, others were coerced. One had already begun a civil suit months prior, but dropped it after a settlement agreement that now looked eerily like hush money. The internet lost its mind. Debates ignited across morning shows and nightly panels. Was Yariel a cold-blooded killer or a broken victim pushed too far? Was Tavian a master manipulator or just another man caught in his own delusion of control? Pundits and preachers weighed in on toxic masculinity, sexual exploitation, and the dark underbelly of influencer culture. The gym bros defended Tavian's grind. Survivors rallied behind Yariel. Old clients pulled their endorsements. Brands distanced themselves. His empire crumbled overnight. And then came the trial. Day after day, America tuned in. Live streams clocked millions of views. Clips from Yariel's testimony circulated like viral memes. She sat in court with dead eyes, speaking in a calm, measured tone. Her lawyer called it trauma-induced dissociation. The prosecution called it calculated. The evidence was damning, but the story was more complicated than guilt or innocence. It was a reckoning. In a world obsessed with image, Tavian Merrick's had built a flawless one, until it shattered beneath the weight of every lie he'd told and every life he'd destroyed. The trial of Yariel Danvers wasn't just a courtroom proceeding, it was a cultural event. Cameras captured every blink, every whisper, every tear. By the time opening arguments began, the nation had already formed its verdict in living rooms, podcast episodes, and Twitter threads. But inside that Dallas courtroom, the truth unfolded in all its tangled, disturbing complexity. Yariel entered the courtroom each day in a beige jumpsuit, her once sleek hair now coiled into a stiff bun. Her eyes, those dark, haunted eyes, rarely looked anywhere but straight ahead. The girl who once quoted scripture in bed, who once believed Tavian Merricks would marry her, now sat at the defendant's table accused of cold-blooded, calculated murder. Her defense attorney, Jamari Singleton, took a bold approach, not to excuse the killing, but to contextualize it. He painted a portrait of a broken mind, shaped by childhood trauma, religious repression, and years of untreated mental illness. He spoke softly, with the cadence of a man who wanted the jury to feel Yariel's heartbeat. She was not sane in that moment, Singleton said during opening statements. She was a ticking time bomb constructed by abuse, humiliation, betrayal, and Tavian Merricks lit the fuse. He presented her childhood records, years of counseling, psychiatric evaluations, a stint in a Louisiana adolescent mental health facility following a violent dormitory outburst. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as her voice echoed, moaning Tavian's name while her tear-streaked face flickered across the screen. One juror reportedly wept. She was violated in ways the law still doesn't fully comprehend, Singleton told them. This wasn't just betrayal. This was exploitation on a national scale. But the prosecution was relentless. Assistant District Attorney Melanie Cruz was clinical, composed, and sharp as glass. She didn't deny Tavian was a manipulator, a narcissist, maybe even a monster. But, she argued, you do not get to murder monsters and walk free. Cruz projected Yariel's internet search history for the jury. Weeks of queries like how to make bondage straps tight, resistance band throat compression, dark web surveillance laws, and how to disappear after murder. She played the 911 call Yariel made less than 20 minutes after the killing. In the audio, Yariel's voice was eerily calm. "There's a dead man in my apartment," she said. "I need someone to come clean him up." Cruz dropped the hammer with a handwritten note found in Yariel's nightstand. It read, "He made me naked to the world. I'll make him bleed for it." Even worse, a USB drive containing a farewell video recorded 3 days before Tavian's death. In it, Yariel stared into the camera, expressionless. "If you're watching this, it means I've done it," she said. "I couldn't live in silence. I couldn't be a secret anymore." The prosecution rested. Closing arguments were fire and ash. The defense begged the jury to see Yariel as a victim who snapped. The prosecution demanded they see her as a woman who planned and executed a murder with chilling precision. It took the jury 11 hours. On April 18, 2025, the court clerk read the verdict aloud. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of cyber harassment. Guilty of unlawful surveillance. Yariel Danvers showed no emotion. No tears. No gasp. Just the same glassy stare she wore the day she walked out of Tavian Merricks' penthouse, covered in his blood. Judge McLaren delivered the sentence the next morning. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Outside, protesters gathered in dueling factions. One group chanted her name in solidarity, holding signs that read "Protect Black Women." The other wore shirts that read "Justice for Tavian" with Flex Extreme logos splashed across their chests. Inside her cell that night, Yariel sat in silence. She no longer believed in peace or fantasies or men who quoted psalms between thrusts. The world had taken everything from her, her body, her mind, her future. But she had taken something back. And for the first time in years, she finally felt seen. Tavian Merricks was a man who sold the illusion of perfection, rippling muscles, motivational mantras, and a smile that promised safety. But behind the curtain, he was a puppeteer of pain, exploiting vulnerability and disguising cruelty as connection. He wasn't just a fitness guru. He was a predator hiding behind protein shakes and scripture. The empire he built wasn't made of steel. It was made of secrets, and eventually, it collapsed under the weight of the lies he told. We're left with more questions than answers. Could this have ended differently if Tavian had lived with integrity? If Yariel had walked away instead of plotting revenge? Or were they both prisoners of their own delusions, bound by the fantasies they clung to in silence? In the end, love didn't just fail them, it destroyed them. If this story disturbed you, moved you, or made you question everything you think you know about desire and power, hit that like button and subscribe. Because in this series, we expose the ugliest truths behind the most seductive lies. And trust us, the darkest stories are still to come.